Hello everyone and welcome back to Joy as It Flies. If you're new here, my name's Cassidy and I deal with the sewing side of this channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you a few tips on the best way to sew with stretchy fabrics. I feel like stretchy fabrics is a bit like buttonholes. It's the part that every seamstress kind of dreads, but at the same time, stretchy fabric can be brilliant in certain projects, particularly if you're a beginner, because it means that you're not having to do things like when you make clothes, you don't need to add closures, you don't have to worry so much about the fit because the stretchy fabric will naturally mold to it. So my goal for today is that I'm going to take away all of your fear of stretchy fabric, and hopefully your next sewing project will be something using stretch fabric. So there's quite a lot to get into today, so I'm going to head straight into the tips. So tip number one is to always make sure you're using the correct needle for your fabric. So if you didn't know, you can get all different types of needles and they're all made to suit a certain type of fabric. So the most general ones used are universal needles, and they're mainly used for woven fabrics, your cottons, linens, things like that. But you can get different needles like leather needles. They're particularly strong and sharp to pierce leather. You can get stretch needles and ballpoint needles. So stretchy ones are nice and obvious. It's mainly used for basically any stretch fabric like lycra and things like that. And ballpoint needles are particularly used for knit fabrics. So I have used stretch needles on jerseys and some slightly knit fabrics and it's been alright. So you can kind of like choose between the two. But if you're very, very unsure, on the back of your needle case, they always give you a list of the fabrics you should use with that needle just to help you a bit more. Now, tip number two is for people who don't have an overlocker. I only bought my overlocker last year. So before that, this is what I used to do. But if you have an overlocker, I would suggest you always use it. It is a game changer. But if you don't have an overlocker, I would suggest you basically never use a straight stitch on your sewing machine. The thing with a straight stitch is it can't stretch at all. So when you stretch your fabric, because the stitches can't stretch, they just snap. Whereas if you use a zigzag stitch has naturally got a bit of stretching in. So when you stretch your fabric, the zigzag stitches stretch with it. So I used to use this for all of my side seams, for hems, for bias tape, for everything. Now this third tip kind of goes hand in hand with the last one because it's still talking about how you can make your stitches as stretchy as possible. And that is try and use polyester thread more than cotton thread. I know it's always nicer to use a natural fibre rather than a synthetic one, but when you're using cotton thread, cotton, because it's a natural fibre, it isn't as stretchy, it's more taut and it's more likely to snap, whereas polyester has a bit of give in it, so one, it's less likely to snap, and two, it does stretch that tiny bit. But apparently, going on from that, you can get a stretchy thread. I'm not talking about shirring because shirring is kind of like a thick tube elastic. You can get thread that is stretchy. I have never used it. I've always found that polyester thread with a zigzag stitch on my overlocker works absolutely fine. But if you want to try it out, I will link it in the description below and you can tell me in the comments whether you enjoyed using it or not. Also, by the way, anything that I do name, like all the needles and any extra little bits and bobs, I will link them all in the description to save you time. By the way, they're not affiliate links, they're just things that I personally use that I think work brilliantly. So tip number four is, when you're sewing with stretchy fabric and it kind of creates those wavy, slightly bumpy stitches, well, to stop that, I would suggest you use a walking presser foot on your sewing machine. So if you look on your sewing machine, you have got just under your presser foot on the needle plate, feed dogs, I think they're called. If that is the correct name, it's a pretty stupid name, I know. But these are basically there to help push your fabric along so that it can run through your machine smoothly. But stretchy fabric, obviously because of that stretch, it sometimes doesn't run through your machine very smoothly. So a walking presser foot just helps to push the fabric along through your machine so that it can go smoothly. Now, some sewing machines come with it. My Juki came with it. Yes, I do have a Juki finally. But my Singer, my first ever sewing machine, it didn't come with it. So once again, I'll link it in the description below. But obviously every different machine uses a different adapter for presser feet. So just make sure that the one down below has the right adapter for your machine. Oh, by the way, if you hear any weird scuffling noises in the background, I apologise. Aslan has decided to join me in the craft shed. Okay, what number are we on? Tip number 5, and this one is for hems. I would suggest you use a twin needle. Now, you know when I was talking about before about not using a straight stitch and instead using a zigzag stitch? Now, zigzag stitches I never like using on a hem. I just feel like it just looks a bit like naff and homemade-ish. But if you use a twin needle, it looks lovely and it gives the same effect as a zigzag stitch because it's got a bit of stretch in it. So a twin needle is basically 2 needles in one. You may notice it on basically any like t-shirt or any clothes that have stretch fabric that you buy at the shops, and it creates 2 lines of parallel stitching, and on the flip side, the wrong side, it's got a zigzag stitch. And what's really good is most sewing machines always come with one, but if not, once again, they're easy to buy. Now, here is the last tip, but most certainly not the least, but at the same time you may think I'm just being really obvious, but it's important, so I'm going to say it anyway, and that is, do not stretch your fabric whilst you're sewing it or whilst you're cutting it. If you stretch your fabric whilst you're cutting, obviously you're going to contort the shape of the pattern that you're cutting out. But also when you cut out, say, necklines and arm lines, be really careful because they are so easy to stretch because they're on a curve. They can actually warp and stretch with woven fabric, so it's 10 times more likely for it to happen on stretchy fabric. So if you don't want that to happen, all I would do is stay stitch the neckline and arm line, which is basically you just stitch basting stitches around it. So really simple. Same goes for sewing it, unless of course you're purposefully stretching the fabric to create gathers or something, or a ruching effect or something. But if you're not, don't stretch your fabric. Once again, it will contort the shape, and 2, it will make the seams bumpy and wavy and things like that. And those are all of the tips I have for you today. I hope they all help, and I hope you now feel a bit more confident with sewing with stretchy fabric. Also, if you like this video and you prefer this sort of format, because generally I do more like tutorials and sewing patterns, but if you prefer more technical videos going deeper into the technical side of sewing, let me know down in the comments so I can make some more. And I'm always happy to have suggestions for more videos for you. And that's all I've got for you today, and I will see you next time.